Hey there, welcome to my little corner of storytelling, the cheating storytelling, if you will. Let's dive right into today's tale. I'm still reeling from how blindsided I was by this one. Camila and I had been hitched for 8 solid years, and man, we had a real backstory. We first crossed paths in college, started with zilch, and pieced together a life from the ground up. Together, we weathered money troubles, cheered for every small victory, and leaned on each other when life threw curveballs. I wasn't naive. Marriage isn't a constant parade of joy and giggles, and I got that. Still, I genuinely believed we had a rock-solid bond, something authentic. But then, one random evening, she smashed that confidence with just a handful of words. Picture this. We're parked at the dinner table, the clinking of forks on plates cutting through an awkward quiet. I'd whipped up spaghetti, her go-to dish, and there it sat, barely touched on her plate. At first, I chalked it up to a tough day at the office. Maybe stress was gnawing at her, I figured. She looked miles away, lost in thought, her fork lazily twirling in slow, aimless loops. I put my glass down, eyeing her with a bit of concern. "Camila, you holding up okay?" I asked. She let out this heavy sigh, and then, without even glancing my way, she dropped a bombshell that hit like a ton of bricks. "Samuel, I need some space," she said, "calm as you please." Those words sounded so bizarre, like I'd somehow gotten them wrong. I lowered my fork, leaning in a touch. "Space," I echoed, eyebrows raised. She nodded, still avoiding my gaze. "Yeah, I feel like I need some independence, to sort myself out." The room went dead silent. My brain kicked into overdrive, scrambling to piece it together. Independence? From what, exactly? It's not like we were trapped in some overbearing, clingy setup. I wasn't that dude who tracked her every step or hovered over her shoulder. She'd always had free rein, going where she pleased, when she pleased. Jealousy? Not my style. I never snooped through her phone or grilled her with a million questions when she hung out with friends. Trust was my default setting, handed out easily because that's the foundation of a marriage, right? And yet, there she was, asking for independence, like it was something she didn't already have in spades. Independence from what, Camila? I kept my tone even but firm when I asked her, "What do you mean? Stuck?" She just shrugged, her eyes still dodging mine like I was invisible. "I don't know, Samuel. I just feel trapped," she mumbled. There wasn't a hint of anger or even sadness in her voice, just this flat, hollow sound, like she'd practiced this little speech in her head 100 times before letting it spill out. I let her words settle over me, heavy and unfamiliar. Trapped? That was news to me. Not even 3 weeks ago, we'd been chatting about what's next, her face lighting up at the thought of a bigger place, maybe even kids down the road. Now, out of nowhere, she's stuck? I could have pressed her, dug for more, or even tried to patch up something that didn't feel broken to me. But I held back. Deep down, a quiet gut feeling whispered that this wasn't about independence or finding herself. Nah, this was something else entirely. So, instead of clinging or arguing, I did what she least expected. I let go. "All right," I said, easing back in my chair, casual as could be. That stopped her cold. Her fingers gripped her fork tighter, and she finally looked at me. "Wait, what?" she stammered, caught off guard. "You want space?" "You've got it," I replied, shrugging like it was no big deal. Her eyes widened. She hadn't seen that coming. I could tell she'd braced herself for a tug-of-war, maybe even hoped I'd plead or grovel to prove she still ruled my universe. But I wasn't about to jump through those hoops. And right then, I caught it. Just a quick flash in her expression. Doubt, maybe. She'd probably figured she could toss out this space line, and I'd still be there, hanging on, waiting for her to stroll back whenever she felt like it. Nope, not happening. In that split second, everything shifted between us. At first, Camila seemed almost giddy about it, like a weight had lifted. She started heading out more, staying gone way later than she ever used to. New outfits popped up in her closet, fancy dresses she'd never bothered with before, heels she used to grumble about because they pinched her feet. And then there was her phone. Back in the day, she'd leave it tossed on the counter, no big deal, notifications pinging away without a care. Now, that thing was glued to her hand, buzzing nonstop like it had a life of its own. Whenever I stepped into the room, Camila would tilt her phone screen away from me or lock it quick before I could catch a glimpse of anything. I didn't bother saying a peep about it. I quit asking where she was headed, stopped checking in when she rolled in late, and didn't sit up waiting for her anymore. She hardly seemed to notice my silence at first. For a stretch, she acted like she'd scored some big victory. But here's the thing about folks chasing that so-called freedom. They never see it coming when they start feeling adrift without the person they'd always counted on being there. And that's exactly what began creeping up on her. It kicked off with tiny cracks, little dents in that bold confidence she'd strutted around with when she first demanded her independence. One night, she stumbled in past midnight. The old Camila, the one who'd shoot me a quick text if she was delayed, the one who'd sneak into bed soft and quiet so I could keep snoozing, was long gone. This new version barged through the front door like she didn't owe a soul an explanation, almost like she was itching for a showdown. I was sprawled on the couch, thumbing through my phone, cool as a cucumber. I didn't even glance up right away. I could sense her standing there, staring me down, waiting for me to bite. After a beat, she shifted her stance, arms folding tight across her chest. "You're not even gonna ask where I was?" she tossed out, her voice sharp. I flicked my eyes up at her, then dropped them back to my screen. "Nope," I said, simple as that. That threw her off. She hadn't banked on me brushing it off so easy. Her gaze tightened, like she was puzzling out if I was yanking her chain. She lingered there a few seconds longer, practically daring me to call her bluff. When I didn't budge, she let out this little huff, eyes rolling as she spun around and headed for the bedroom. But just before she vanished down the hall, I caught it, a quick flash of irritation, like she was itching for me to snap, like she needed me to show I still gave a darn. I didn't. And that was the first moment it hit her that something had shifted. 10 days later, things ramped up. Camila started firing off texts my way more often, but not about the usual stuff. No, "Hey, grab some milk?" Or "Did you handle the trash?" Nope. Now she was fishing for my whereabouts. The first time it happened, I was out kicking back with a couple buddies, just unwinding after a long week. My phone buzzed in my pocket, and when I fished it out, Camila's name lit up the screen. "Where are you?" the message read. I skimmed it and let it hang there, unanswered. About an hour later, another one rolled in. "Are you coming home soon?" I didn't bother replying to that one either. For months, she'd breezed through life like I was barely a blip on her radar, and now, out of the blue, she's keeping tabs on me? I almost chuckled at the irony. The next night, I was getting ready to head out again, smoothing out my shirt as I buttoned it up. Camila strolled into the bedroom and propped herself against the doorframe, arms folded, eyeing me like a hawk. "Where you off to?" she asked, her tone light but laced with a sharpness I couldn't miss. "Out," I replied, keeping it short as I fiddled with my watch. Her brows pinched together just a tad. "With who?" she pressed. I smirked, scooping up my keys. "Why's it matter to you?" That caught her off balance. She blinked, flustered. I didn't think you'd pull back this far," she admitted, her voice softening. And there it was, the penny dropping, the slow crumble of the control she thought she'd locked down. She'd spent weeks acting like my presence was optional, like I could be there or not, and it wouldn't faze her. Now, for the first time, she was getting a taste of what it felt like to be the one left wondering, and she couldn't stand it. Me? I was done waiting around, done guessing, done pouring energy into someone who'd already halfway checked out. She'd wanted space, and now she had it in spades. Funny thing is, she wasn't loving it as much as she thought she would. Then came the clincher. Camila had stepped into the kitchen, leaving her phone on the coffee table, unlocked, which was a rarity these days. I wasn't digging for dirt, wasn't trying to play detective. But as I passed by, my eyes flicked to the screen, and a notification popped up, plain as day. "I miss you. When can I see you again?" Those words glowed there, slicing right through any lingering shred of optimism I might have clung to. My gut tightened for a split second, but my face stayed steady, no rage, no surprise, just a cool, quiet confirmation of what I'd been piecing together for weeks. She didn't need space to find herself, and she sure didn't need time to sort out her head. That was all a cover story, one she'd probably fed herself as much as she'd fed me. What she really craved was the freedom to chase someone new while still keeping me as her safety net, her fallback plan. Well, that game was over now. I'd been her fallback, her plan B, the guy she figured would stick around, twiddling my thumbs, while she played her little side game. But now, it was dawning on her that she'd misjudged the whole darn thing. I stood there, staring at that phone screen for a few extra beats, but I didn't grab it. I didn't swipe to dig deeper, didn't hunt for more messages, didn't try to map out how long she'd been at this. Because right then, it hit me. I was done caring. Whatever she'd pulled, whoever she'd been cozying up to, it just didn't matter anymore. I wasn't about to hand her the big showdown she might have been expecting. No way was I gonna grill her with, "Who's this guy?" Or "How long's this been going on?" Or "Why'd you do it?" The truth was already crystal clear. She thought she could keep me on standby while she dipped her toes somewhere else. Thing is, she'd already lost me, and now she was the one with something slipping through her fingers. The next morning, I didn't mess around. I threw on some clothes, snatched my car keys, and peeled out straight for a lawyer's office. No waffling, no overthinking. I'd locked in my choice the night before. This marriage was toast. The lawyer was all business, sharp and to the point. I laid it out plain. I wanted a clean split. No messy battles, no dragged-out nonsense, just the papers, a couple signatures, and my ticket to freedom. He gave a quick nod, fired off a few questions, and got to work hammering out the documents. By the time I stepped out of that office, the wheels were turning. I drove back home knowing Camila wouldn't be there. She'd mumbled something about errands the night before, and for once, I was thankful she was out. I didn't want her around when I walked through that door. No pausing, no second thoughts. I grabbed a suitcase and started tossing stuff in. Just the basics. Clothes, a few must-haves, some odds and ends that were mine. As I moved through the house, it sank in how much of my world had been tangled up with hers over the years. But I didn't get all mushy about it, not even close. Before I headed out, I swung by the kitchen, slid open the drawer where we stashed all our important papers, and fished out our marriage certificate. There it was, sitting quietly among the bills and receipts, a little piece of what used to be us. I stood there, gazing at that marriage certificate for a heartbeat, feeling the weight of all those years we'd slogged through together pressing down on my chest. Then, without overthinking it, I ripped it clean in two and set the pieces smack in the center of the kitchen table, my final farewell note. Suitcase in hand, I strode out the front door and didn't spare a glance back. Later that evening, I checked into a hotel, and the quiet of that room didn't feel empty, it felt like a breath of fresh air. For the first time in ages, I was the one steering my own ship. A couple hours after settling in, my phone lit up with Camila's name. I let it ring out, and it kept buzzing again, then again. Text started rolling in. Samuel, where are you? Why are your things gone? Please talk to me. I left them sitting there, unanswered. She'd figure it out soon enough. A few days later, the divorce papers landed in her hands. Didn't take long for my phone to start humming again. This time, I picked up. The second the call connected, her voice came through, all rattled and wild. Samuel, what is this? What are you doing? I leaned back in the chair at my new apartment, cool as a breeze. Ending this, I said, plain and steady. Her breath snagged. You're serious? Dead serious, I shot back. She went quiet for a sec, then her tone softened, pleading. Samuel, please, can we just talk? Whatever's wrong, we can fix it. I let out a dry little laugh. Wrong? You're what's wrong, Camila. And I know. Silence stretched out, then she whispered, barely audible. No, what? I didn't dance around it, didn't soften the blow. I swung the truth like a sledgehammer. I know you've been cheating. She gasped, Samuel, but I cut her off sharp. That's why you wanted space, right? That's why you needed independence to figure things out? Well, guess what? I needed the same, and I figured out I don't need you. She started sobbing, the kind of tears she probably thought might sway me. I made a mistake. I wasn't thinking straight, she choked out. I sighed, already checked out of this whole mess. That's your mess to deal with now. Samuel, please don't do this, she begged. I didn't bite. I just hung up, blocked her number, and switched off my phone. Leaning back, I felt a grin creep across my face, the first real one in years, because my life was finally mine again. The divorce sailed through without a hitch, no big courtroom showdowns, no drawn-out tantrums. She didn't fight it, probably knew she didn't have a shred of ground to stand on. Once it was official, I moved forward, landed a fresh job opportunity, and started living for me, truly, for the first time. Months rolled by, and Camila faded to a blip in my rearview, a lesson tucked away. Then one evening, I bumped into her at the grocery store. She looked different, not terrible, just worn, like someone who'd been running after a mirage for too long. She spotted me first, hesitated, then decided she had nothing to lose and walked over. Samuel, she said, flashing a weak smile. Hey. I gave a nod. Camila. Her eyes flicked to my cart, then back up. You look good. Thanks, I replied, not tossing the compliment back. She shifted, uneasy, then let out a sigh. Look, I wanted to say I'm sorry. I raised an eyebrow. For what, exactly? She swallowed hard. For everything. For taking you for granted. For making the biggest mistake of my life. A pause, then she added, it didn't work out with him. I nearly laughed, shocker, right? She took a deep breath. I don't expect you to forgive me, but maybe we could try again. I looked at her, really looked at her, for a long moment, then shook my head. No, Camila. We can't. Her face crumpled. Samuel, please. I stopped her cold. You lost me, and there's no coming back from that. Her shoulders sagged, and she looked like she wanted to argue, but the words didn't come. Instead, she just nodded, eyes glistening as she fought back tears. I get it, she murmured. I gave her one last glance, then turned and walked off. As I left the store, I didn't feel mad, didn't feel sad, just free. Thanks for sticking with me through this one, folks.